Hello and thank you for joining me again today. We're going to be discussing resource allocation and management. Our key focus is going to be on strategy execution, and so we're talking resources and how those resources enable the execution of strategy. There are a few key points that I want you to pick out from today, key learnings. The first one being the purpose of resource allocation or resourcing the strategy. Why must we allocate resources towards our strategy? The second one is understanding the process of developing a strategy budget. Yes, there is such a thing called strategy budget. I know some executives, believe it or not, are not familiar with strategy budgets. So we're going to be talking about how do we develop one and make one that is effective. And the other one is to appreciate the common mistakes that organizations make in as far as resource allocation is concerned. And finally, we'll be sharing some practical strategies that you can apply, some techniques in allocating resources to enable us to achieve our strategic goals. Let's get straight into the first discussion point. Well, at a very high level, it is very important for us to allocate resources towards our strategy. First and foremost, just to ensure that our strategy or the resources that we do have are aligned to the strategic goals that we have agreed. So half the time, like we spoke about in the previous sessions, that we do have the day-to-day operational activities that we get involved in that is called business as usual. And half the time we did say that it is a whirlwind. That book that I was telling you about, the 4 disciplines of execution. We're speaking about the day-to-day operations as the whirlwind that we get caught up in. And so when we are talking about strategy, we'll find that we do have resources. Yes, we agree they are finite, they are limited, they are not always in abundance. But the resources that we do have, are we using them to facilitate or enable the achievement of those strategic goals that we have set, or we are taking all the resources that we have and we're using them in the day-to-day business as usual? Are we using all of our resources in the day-to-day? Remember, when we set the strategy, we're saying for us to be in a better position strategically as an organization in the next 5 years or whatever period we would have agreed, we need to be implementing these particular initiatives, and this is what they would perhaps achieve for us. So that means if we are spending all the resources that we have in the normal day-to-day activities, chances of us being in that advantageous position in the next 5 years are very slim, or should I say none, really. So we want to make sure that even as we take care of the day-to-day, we do have resources which are channeled towards the achievement of those strategic goals that we set for ourselves. And that is why we must take time to systematically, almost even scientifically, allocate resources towards the strategy that we set. The other high-level point that I want to share, just to lay a case for us to allocate resources, is so that we don't miss opportunities. If you allocate your resources poorly, you find you've put your best people, your best finances, or your best facilities, properties, even technology in the wrong things, when now there are opportunities which we could have capitalized on that we didn't, and we have missed out on those opportunities. So it's important that we think deliberately and strategically about where we are going to place our resources so that we can capture the opportunities we identified. Usually during strategy sessions, in our SWOT analysis, where we're doing environmental analysis, we normally identify opportunities that we feel, should we put our act together, our act right, or should we get our act right, we will be able to capitalize on these opportunities, see growth in various ways. And therefore, if we don't put resources, allocate our resources towards that, then we miss out on those opportunities. The other one is just general wastage. If we don't strategically think about how are we allocating the resources that we have, we're always going to feel we don't have enough resources, whereas there is a lot of wastage that's built into our day-to-day operations that if we sit down to really thin out and look at how we are using our people, our time, etc., all those are resources. How best can we achieve what we want to do? So you'll find there's a lot of wastage in the cracks in our processes, etc. So that is at a high level why we need to be careful about allocating our resources, and in particular allocating our resources to support our strategic intentions. So let's go on into understanding what a strategy budget is. I know that most of us are familiar with the word budget, maybe from a personal perspective, but also at an organizational level. We could maybe have been exposed to budgets before. So maybe just at a high level to say we have operational expenses that we incur in a business, which refers to those day-to-day expenses that we incur on a monthly basis, every day running of the business, the electricity, the internet, insurance expenses, the salaries that we pay our people, rentals if we're renting buildings. All those are operational expenses that the company pays every month, every year to keep the company running. And we have capital expenditure, which is normally abbreviated CAPEX. And so when you hear me saying CAPEX, I'll be referring to capital expenditure, where the company is spending money on assets that will last the company and longer than a year, that normally last longer than a year. So it's just basically an investment in your fixed assets. Some of them are the normal buildings and cars and whatnot. Some of them are a bit more on the softer side, like your technology, which may not necessarily always be hardware. It could be software. Some of it is investing in some high level purchasing of intellectual property, so the company wants to own some patents, etc. So those would then go into the capital expenditure. So we're talking here about the purchasing of fixed assets, and usually sometimes it can be a purchase, a once-off purchase. Sometimes it can be a project where you're building a particular system from scratch, or you're building a building infrastructure from scratch. So that would constitute the capital budget. So the operational expenditure, which I'll abbreviate OPEX because that's the common abbreviation. The operational expenditure, the everyday one that we're running, as well as the capital expenditure, when it's put there, we normally call that the company budget. Now, when you have that budget and it's been approved, how much of those operational expenses and those capital expenses are going towards the strategic initiatives that we agreed? Remember, I'm going to paint the picture again so that we just keep the same picture in mind. If you have agreed as an organization that our baseline is where we are today, the status quo and every indicator of performance as it stands today, these are our revenues, this is the level of our customer satisfaction, our staff satisfaction, etc. We want to be sure that we are at a different place in 5 years. Yeah. So in 5 years, we want to have increased our revenues, increased our brand strength, increased, etc. For us to go from the baseline where we are today, there are certain initiatives or projects that we must engage in to move us from the normal day-to-day into a better strategic position where we are more competitive, we have better revenues, we have better market share, etc. So these initiatives that must take place are normally left out in the budgeting process. So you'll have your operational expenses here, your capital expenses here, all geared towards ensuring that we maintain the status quo. Whereas we have these ones that we have agreed in the strategy that every year as we sit together for a strategy session, there is no allocation of resources to it. So when we now talk about a strategy budget, we are referring to a structured approach where we allocate resources into those strategic initiatives, in line with those strategic initiatives. So we would like to see at the end of the day, when you show me your operational expenditure, you show me your capital expenditure, and I say, where is your strategy budget? Meaning, where are the resources that you have specifically allocated towards strategic initiatives? Because if we don't allocate resources there, we're not demonstrating our commitment to getting those strategic initiatives going. And we also don't want to get caught up in just financing or resourcing in whatever capacity. We'll talk about the different components. We don't want to just be resourcing the day-to-day, where if we continued with the day-to-day, the company is not guaranteed to still be in existence in the next 5 years. So we should be able to resource the day-to-day operations, but at the same time, we must be seen to be putting substantial resourcing towards the strategy, those initiatives that will change the game for us and take us to another level. I hope that makes sense. So that is basically the purpose. The first one is to ensure that we have allocated resources, that decision making can then be supported by this agreement that we've made. If it's a strategic approach or a systematic approach, where we're saying this will be spent towards or we will be allocated towards strategic objectives, then when you're making your decisions every day, you know it's guided. So this allocation here supports decision making, and it then ensures that we are aligned to our strategic goals. We are aligning our resources towards the achievement of those strategic goals. If this is not done day to day as a manager, how do you know? As a director, how do you know that what you're doing every day is actually getting us to where we want to be strategic towards those strategic goals? You will not know. And so when you are making your decisions every day, it helps if you have a strategy budget, because then you can, money tells us a story. For me, coming from a chartered accountancy background, I know that money tells us a story. So when I look at your budget, I can already tell the story. When I say, where is the strategy budget, and you can't exactly show me where it is, that's already telling me the story that, so we have a strategy. I see that in your past financial statements, you had paid a consultant to help you build a strategy. So it is there somewhere, because that money is already spent. It's a sunk cost. But when I look at your budget this year, I don't see your strategy budget. So it's already telling me a story that strategy, or whatever initiatives you've agreed, which are of strategic importance to achieve strategic goals, are not actually going to be funded. They're not going to be supported with resources. So then when you make decisions as a leader, month to month, week to week, how do I know that you are actually working towards the achievement of strategic goals? Chances are you're working towards the achievement of operational goals. And we're not saying operational goals are not important, but if we want to be here and more competitive and more relevant and more impactful in the next 5 years, we should be doing things every week, every day towards the achievement of strategic goals. So you can see that when you have properly allocated resources towards the achievement of strategic goals, then it guides in your decision making. When you are signing off and approving expenditure as it is going out, you know that not all of it is operational. Some of it is going towards strategic goals. So that alignment, that decision making is aligned. It also helps in the efficient use of resources. Like I said earlier, we want to be sure that we are using our resources efficiently. We're not wasting our resources, where we could be taking all of this money and spending it on normal expenditure. All of this time, all of these people, all of them working on the operational processes day to day, business as usual. We are being wasteful. Some of the time, the money, the resources could be put towards strategic initiatives. So when we take time to say, guys, what resources do we have and what can we allocate towards the achievement of strategic goals, we start seeing that we actually don't waste time. Where there are pockets of people who are normally sitting there idle, they could be helping another team push strategic projects. So you can see that efficiency is improved in this case. Less wastage of time, people, money, buildings, you name it, we'll get into it. So the other one is also the benefit of setting this strategy budget is to ensure that we support the achievement of strategic goals. Remember, we don't want to just speak about strategic goals and then we don't set aside any resources systematically to show that we are committed to achieving those strategic goals. Even the people that we say, you are leading that initiative, they need to be feeling that there's actually evidence of support towards the achievement of these goals. And so a strategy budget is that evidence support that we want to ensure that we achieve those strategic goals that we have set for ourselves. And usually a strategy document is like a document full of our dreams, isn't it? So we've spoken about this is where we are, this is where we want to be, these are the beautiful end results, these are the indicators that we'll see to show that we are there. Maybe I should disclose my underlying assumption. Speaking like a true chartered accountant, when I present to you what I'm presenting today, I want to be sure that I've disclosed my underlying assumption. At this point, I'm assuming that you'll have set your strategy and that you have clear key performance indicators in those strategic against each one of those strategic goals. And so when I'm saying that we have that as a list of what we would love to see, then in this case our strategy document is just a I guess an amalgamation of dreams, from the finance side to the marketing and branding and market position side, to our operations and product and services side. So it's just a book that contains our dreams, and it can be very daunting. Just like having a bucket full of ice cream can be daunting. You just have so much sugar. There is ice cream here, there's marshmallows there, there's sweets of all kinds. Before you know it, you're not even touching it. It's just overwhelming. Strategy documents can also be like that. So you want to be sure that we systematically sit down and say, guys, how are we allocating resources towards each one of these dreams? And we'll talk about even when are we allocating these resources towards these dreams, so that we can see the dreams coming alive one dream at a time. So that is just an understanding of a strategy budget. I'll try to elaborate more as we continue. Maybe let's just talk about the key components of a strategy budget. I did say that I was going to be calling it Stratex, basically referring to strategy expenditure. So when I say Stratex, just take it as the abbreviation I'm using for our strategy budget. Yeah, so there is that saying that it takes money to make money in some instances. I will, of course, talk to you more about resourcefulness and doing more with little in a later session. Yes, in this course, for now, we're still talking about allocating resources. So the key components of the strategy expenditure: one, we want to deal with financial allocation. The very most obvious one is the financial allocation, and this is the one that most times when people say Stratex, they're referring to the financial allocation or the allocation of funds, the money that you put aside for financing strategic initiatives. Yes, indeed, but there are other components of this of a strategy expenditure or strategy budget or Stratex, which don't necessarily refer to finances. So the financial allocation is exactly that. What are we allocating towards our strategy budget? And usually, because strategic initiatives are 5-year projects, or they fall somewhere within the 5-year timeline, we want to be clear on an annual basis which ones we are allocating finances towards. Yeah, so there could be those initiatives that we want to do in year 2, and those strategic initiatives that will only start in year 3, and those that will be in year 4, and etc. So you want to be sure about this year, this particular year that we're drawing up our strategy for, which ones must be started. So we will talk about sort of the things that inform our prioritization, and so that we can put those first initiatives into this first year. But it's important that we then allocate resources. In some instances, some projects may not necessarily take off in that year in question that we're planning our strategy budget, but they will take off in the following year. However, there could be some planning that goes into those projects before the project actually takes off. So you may want to engage an external consultant to come and do project planning and baseline assessments, etc. So that is not the project itself taking off. It could be the things that need to be done by maybe an external party or insourcing. So those also may have to go into this current year's strategy budget. Yes, the main project is going to go into the following year's budget, but in this year's strategy budget, we are calling in, say, consultants, or we are setting aside certain team members to start this baseline assessment or preparation for next year's takeoff in the project. So that could require some financial allocation that needs to be done in the current year. So that, please keep that in mind, because usually you find people are saying, oh yes, I know this project is coming next year, but this year I wanted to call in a consultant to come and help us do project planning, and that consultant has not been budgeted for, because according to your timelines, this project is starting in year 2 or in year 3. So bear that in mind, so that we can create some financial allocation towards those preparatory expenses. So financial allocation is just exactly that. It's looking at your strategic initiatives and saying, how much money do we need to allocate towards? Of course, it's going to depend on financial capabilities. It's not to say because we have this dream list, this wish list of initiatives, we're going to take all of them. We're going to prioritize, and we're also going to consider the organization's financial capabilities. Yeah. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then the other allocation that makes up the strategy budget is the human resource allocation. So it's not that everything is money, money, money. Sometimes it's about what personnel are you assigning towards that strategic project that you want to start based on people's capabilities, their skills, their experience, etc. You may want to allocate them to a project or a strategic initiative. Remember, strategic initiatives by nature, they have a start date and an end date. As soon as something is just an ongoing project process or an ongoing activity, then it has moved away from strategy initiative or strategic initiative. If we still term it as a strategic initiative, we normally want to see it have a start date and an end date. And when it ends, we want to then embed it into our normal cultural activities or operational activities so that it now is part of what we do. At that point, it ceases to be a strategic initiative. We have now strategically transitioned where it is now our new normal place. I hope that makes sense. So when we're talking about a strategic initiative and allocating personnel towards taking off that strategic initiative is because that strategic initiative has a start and an end date. So we know our people who are allocated towards that will be doing it like a project, and they will be coming back to join in, or they could be doing it part-time, where full-time they're in their day-to-day job and part-time they're in their project or in that strategic initiative to see it off the ground. So it's important that we know about human resource allocation and sometimes even how to go about budgeting for human resources, because sometimes it's not worthwhile to employ people who are coming in from outside and you now are spending extra on this project. Then you have to let people go, and then you have to give them their benefits as they are going, and maybe you have also distorted the culture. So it's important to first and foremost exhaust the resources that you have internally. Look at the capabilities of the people in-house and say, can these people do this work? Yeah, so some people may want to do it for job enrichment. It may be good for their profiles. It may be good for their exposure. So you want to make sure you give your internal people an opportunity for growth as well. So human resource allocation is not always about I'm going to be employing people from outside. And because I am talking to executives, junior and senior executives at this point, I also want to impress upon you that you have to be willing to let people gain exposure through strategic projects. You need to help people build their resumes and their growth while they're still within the organization. We tend to hoard our staff members, and you know there's a project that needs people and you are hoarding your team. You are exaggerating how busy and engaged they are when there's actually an opportunity, because this is a pool. Your team members constitute a pool. You know, they are part of what the company calls a pool of resources. So the company must be able to tap into its pool of resources, whether or not they are under you. So it's important that we have an open mind and we're building towards achieving common strategic goals. When I say common, I mean they affect all of us and we are all working towards the same strategic goals. We are all congruent. We're not serving you as an executive or a junior executive or senior executive. We're not serving your agenda. We are serving the organization's strategic goals, which we have all agreed to have seen what the picture should be. At this point, I'm assuming even the board has approved your strategy. So therefore, it's important that you open up yourself and allow your people to participate in strategic goals. And just set a timeline and say, hey, look, I will let my people work on that project from this month to that month and in these times. So it's important that we allow, at this point, I'm still speaking specifically to the human resource within the organization. Organizations frustrate people, especially when it comes to strategic initiatives. They will just go out and get consultants and get people from outside, project managers, etc. from outside, when we have our own internal people, most of whom have been trained in project management. They've been taken to Cape Town and to the ends of the world to study these things, and when it's time for them to play a role or to be part of the strategic initiative implementation or execution, they are left out. So when we allocate resources, I don't want to belabor the point, let us also use the people within the organization. And sometimes the strategic initiative brings about change, which I will speak about in the next class. So this it's an opportunity for your people to do change management, for you also watching this to get involved in change management, learn what it is about, be part and parcel of change management initiatives. Your people also play a role in change management. So this is yet another opportunity for you to allow your people to expand their resume, stretch themselves, understand, build other skills, and become better even for the organization going forward. So allow people, human resources, to be allocated towards projects, and also volunteer your own skills, your experience to be part of these strategic projects, because it's good for your growth. So when we're talking human resource allocation, don't always pin it to money. Don't always look at it as an opportunity to make more money. Sometimes it's an opportunity to gain skills, to stretch yourself and see what capabilities you have, work with other teams, cross-functional teams, things that you don't do on a regular basis. See how well you work under pressure, and also deliver results. Get the pride of having contributed to a successful strategic goal or a successful completion of a strategic project. And so that is also good for your own growth and the growth of your people. So volunteer yourself and your people when we are allocating resources. And it also helps if some finances also could be allocated towards the extra hours that people could be working to get the strategic initiative off the ground. And therefore the human resource allocation can be had as part of the financial allocation. So whether it's going to be your local people or yourselves who are going to be engaged in the strategic project, or it's going to be external people that we're taking in maybe on a temporary basis, or maybe we're establishing a new wing, it's up to, it depends on what the project is. But those people, or your people, whoever is going to be involved in that strategic project, will require financial allocation to be considered as well. Again, I will say it's not a guarantee. It's just based on the financial capabilities of the business. I wouldn't want you to look at this as an opportunity to make money for yourself, but as an opportunity to participate, or your team to participate in the achievement of strategic goals. For the same time that the company is already paying you for, you can allocate some of that time into the strategic initiative. And maybe that's leading me to time and schedule allocation. So when we're talking about human resource allocation, we could also now talk about, still as part of a strategy budget, what time, what schedule are we allocating towards strategy initiatives or strategic initiatives? When you are paying people for their 8 to 5, how much of that time can be dedicated towards the strategic initiative that we're carrying out in that year? So then it means if there's any overtime that people have to work, that can also be discussed, agreed, and authorized, so that there's a financial allocation to it, either on a monthly basis, or it's something that HR could be involved, so that we do it as a bonus at the end of the project, or we do it as a bonus, but that is allocated as the project is going on month to month. So there are many approaches that you could use to incentivize the time and schedule allocation that you're doing towards the strategy initiatives. So you see that this is a deeper conversation that should be had between the people who are chosen to lead strategic initiatives and yourselves, the managers, the directors, and the deputy CEOs and the CEO within the organization. How are we allocating our human resources? How are we allocating our time and schedules to make sure that our people are actually freed up to go and engage in the strategic initiative? The strategic initiatives will not carry themselves out. So don't rule yourself out and say this topic does not relate to you. It does. Even if we're getting consultants to come and do this project for us, as soon as they land in the building, they want our time. They want us to schedule moments where we're sitting with them or working with them towards the achievement of their goals, so of the strategic goals. So it's important that we allocate that time and we schedule it accordingly. We allocate the people, we schedule them accordingly, and it affects our contracts, our performance contracts. When you're allocating human resources towards strategic initiatives, you want to ensure that those specific tasks are included in one's performance contract, so that should it be a discussion around their performance, their bonuses, or however you want to incentivize this person, they know that what they're doing in the strategy or in the achievement of strategic goals is not seen to be either a distraction away from their normal day-to-day or absconding from their normal day-to-day. It's actually seen as a part of what they're paid to do on an 8 to 5 in a day-to-day, or what they're paid extra or incentivized to carry out. So all of these must be clearly articulated in their contract. The other point I wanted to raise, even as we're talking human resource allocation, time and schedule allocation, is cross-functional collaboration. I will keep emphasizing it. It is important that you know, normally strategic projects, because they are not day-to-day, they require multidisciplinary individuals to be in the team. So you should know that your team is going to be working with somebody else, and that what they're doing in that project, they have to report to somebody else. And therefore, when you're doing your performance evaluation, you want to get some input from the person who's leading that strategic initiative regarding the 1 hour or the 2 hours or whatever the number of days that your staff member or you yourself are working on that project, so that it can be the results of your performance can be discussed with your direct manager or direct supervisor about how you are performing in that strategic project. So it's important that all these things are tied in neatly, and it calls for people to collaborate, maturity even in the part of you as executives to wake up and know that we have to work together. We have to allow our people to participate in strategic initiatives. We want our organization to hit those strategic goals, and it's going to take me and this person and the other person working together collaboratively to make sure that it happens. And it's usually marred with politics, but you have to keep going through those politics and, you know, really fight through to the other end. You can't avoid the politics, but we cannot also harbor the silos and lead to resource, wastage, where people are just sitting there waiting for 5 o'clock just because you did not want to release them to go and work on a strategic project. So we have to really plow through our differences and get our people allocated to strategic projects. And this is usually where strategy just dies, what people call a natural death. It's usually not a natural death. It's induced by executives, junior and senior executives like yourself. So let's make sure that we collaborate to get our organization hitting those strategic goals, because it is doable. The last allocation that I want to speak about, which is a component of our strategies, is technological allocation. This is where you're putting allocation of technology. You're investing in the technology that can be used to assist people in the achievement of strategic goals. I say assist people because normally people get scared. Oh, technology is coming to replace you. Yes, it could, but only to the extent that you are not able to use it, where it now has to take over from you and do other things. And when it does take over the inefficiencies from you and it does them automatically, then it should be freeing up your time to use the technologies in other areas as well. So we want to invest in technology to improve our efficiencies. Technology can help us achieve certain things faster. So sometimes the technological investment could be the strategic initiative itself. Maybe we want to launch a new software, or want to launch a new app in the organization, or maybe we want to introduce a new system. So that could be a strategic initiative in and of itself. However, sometimes we have a strategic initiative over there. It's talking about increasing customer satisfaction. So we are overhauling our customer service processes, for example. And now we could be thinking about what technology could we invest in that could be part of that strategic initiative, or that could make that strategic initiative even better. So we are here overhauling our processes on how we service our customers. Imagine if we had an app that could do 1, 2, 3 for the customer. Voila. So it is a technological investment that will be helping, the strategic initiative or goal to be achieved. So that is something that you must also be open to, especially because technology is changing so fast. You want to be, as an executive, however junior, however senior your position is, technology requires the humility of us all to learn the new technologies as they come about and to make sure we take advantage of these technologies. And because they change even the utilities, they change even our perspective on how certain things should be done. They change even the routine that would otherwise follow. So that component of change and change management we have covered in another session that you will get to. So here I want you to appreciate that it calls for you to shift your mindset. Mindset discussions are also covered, yes, in this course at another point of the course, so that you can accommodate within you the change that is brought about by technology and be willing to invest in the technology that can help make our strategic initiatives better and faster. You know, I was experimenting with Gamma. There's an app called Gamma, Gamma, that you may want to check out, because technology can really revolutionize the way we do things, and the more open we are to technology as executives, the better we'll actually find ourselves. So I took a document, just a Word document, and I threw it on Gamma, because Gamma, I was learning about Gamma, and I took that full document, Word document, I threw it on Gamma, and I said, Gamma, produce slides out of this document. And it was so shocking, because you know PowerPoint presentations usually take forever, because you want to put the picture here, you want to put the tables, the graphs, so that you can draw an arrow, you know, and make sure each PowerPoint slide is up to scratch. So to just take a Word document as a whole and just throw it into a system and say to this artificial intelligence app, can you develop slides from this? I watched Gamma literally take that document and just go, and I had like 17 slides. I was like, whoa, this is insane. I even now went back, and they would give the app gives you an opportunity to go back and change some things which are in the document. I thought, I don't need 17 slides. Let me just go remove some of the topics and then tell the artificial intelligence, I don't need this topic. I just want emphasis on these particular topics. Within seconds, I'm not talking about minutes. I'm not saying you go and have coffee, when you come back it will be done. No, right there as you're watching, it just goes, here are your 7 slides. I couldn't believe it. With graphs, with pictures, with analysis, with arrows, diagrams, you name it, it was there. And they would even give you an opportunity to replace some of the AI generated pictures with your original pictures. I just couldn't believe it. And this one I'm most excited about, because PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint slides will keep you working. So the sooner we can engage and allow technology to make our world more efficient, the better. Because then you can see, as a CEO watching this, you could actually take a document, even your strategy document, throw it into Gamma and get slides within 3 seconds, and you're ready to present your entire document in PowerPoint slides within seconds. So we need to be open to such discussions and invest money, even team members who can say, we are your IT team, but if you were to take 2 people from IT as human resource allocation, we can build an app and it will require this much. So that technological investment or technological allocation is the one I'm speaking to now. It could be a strategic initiative in and of itself, or it could be used to support an ongoing strategic initiative to help us hit our strategic goals faster, more efficient, even cost saving. And the cost savings may not be ours. Maybe we could be transferring some of those cost savings, time savings, etc., to our clients and making our service better. So let us be open to such, because they would revolutionize our ability to achieve strategic goals. So here we're being intentional and very practical. So bear with us in the course, because we're not going to be telling you page 10 says this. We're going to be telling you practically this is how you could do it. So those are the key components that I wanted to highlight. The first one being the financial allocation, the human resource allocation being second, time and schedule allocation being third, and technological allocation being fourth. Maybe you could also have infrastructure allocation, because some project will require that there should be a specific building that is put aside, or an office space that is put aside for the project. So infrastructure allocation could also be in there. Some people would say we need laptops for the project team. That could also be part of the technological allocation. So maybe you can throw in infrastructure allocation so that the strategic initiative has specific infrastructure, physical infrastructure that's put aside for the people who are working on that initiative. So those are the components of strategy of the strategy budget, or stratex. Now let's talk about the process of strategy development. I think we were alluding to it. I just want to make sure that we are clear about it. I did say at the beginning that I'm assuming that at this point you've already set your strategic vision, your mission is clear, you have your strategic goals, and you have set clear key performance indicators for your goals. To say that we have achieved our goals, we will see this. And therefore, we're now saying, okay, let's turn those goals into SMART objectives. And once you have your SMART objectives, we now can say which ones here are the most important objectives, the key ones for this year. So we're setting year 1 objectives, and we can say what are the resource requirements for each objective to be achieved. So we are looking at the resources that you want. Is it money? Is it people? Is it time that you want allocated? Maybe it's working space. So there's that infrastructure allocation that we finished talking about just now. So what are the resources that will be required to have those objectives achieved? Kindly ensure that it's efficient use of resources. It's not lavish. Just because it's a strategic project doesn't mean that it has to carry the most money. And this is the mistake I've seen executives make in my years in strategy, is where people think that for a project to be considered strategic, a strategic project, or to be considered of strategic importance, it has to carry a high financial burden for the company. That is not true. Just because you want to change or bring an initiative that's going to revolutionize the way we do things doesn't mean it has to cost a lot of money. Yes, if you are talking about a building, a new building, then we can be, putting millions aside for that building. That doesn't mean the millions are what makes the building project a strategic initiative. Remember, CapEx is a normal annual budget. It's part of the normal annual budget. So just because it's millions doesn't mean it's strategic. So that we must get clear. I should have emphasized it when we were talking about financial allocation. Because when you're overhauling customer service processes, for example, that could achieve massive strategic goals for the organization. But sometimes it doesn't even cost millions at all. Few thousands, even a few hundreds of thousands, if at all. So it's important that we don't attach millions to strategic importance. So now we look at the resources that we believe that a strategic initiative is going to require. Because I've seen sometimes when you ask a strategic initiative owner, how much do you think you're going to need for this strategic initiative in these next 12 months? 8 million. Just pull a figure from the sky and say, 8 million. What is the 8 million going to be used for? We'll see this, that, and the other as we're preparing for this project, because it's going to kick off next year. Just to mention several millions doesn't mean that that's what makes your project strategic. So we need to really have a paradigm shift on that, to know that strategic doesn't always entail a lot of money. In fact, the more money you need, the more crippled we'll be and never hit our strategic goals. So the more resourceful, which is something we'll talk about in the next few classes, we are, the better. Because usually the company is coming from a baseline where there is no money, and we're trying to hit strategic initiatives that can give us better strategic performance. So we would need you to be able to do a lot with a lot less. So here we are allocating resources towards the objectives, and then what's most important is prioritization of those initiatives. So we have to say, okay, so we have all these, like I said, it's a dream, it's a wish list in our strategy document. This is what we could do, and we could do that, and we could do this, and the world would be better. Which ones are wildly important? I'll still refer you to that book that I so love, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's talking about wildly important goals. So you have all these ones that you've put here, but which ones are most important to help us achieve something that's more impactful? Even the decision-making process there is to say, we have all these 10 objectives, but if we did these 2 here, they would help us achieve greater goals, or they would help us really move the needle in as far as strategic goals are concerned. Yeah, so here we are applying almost the 80-20 rule. Yeah, you have 100%, 80% are not necessarily going to give us the big jump that we're looking for in the strategic sense, but if we concentrated on the 20% of these here, these 2 here, they could give us a bigger impact. So you see, you are leveraging. You just look at which lever would give you more results, and those are the ones that you can say, guys, we have these wildly important goals. Urgency also plays a role. You want to see certain strategic results. How soon do you want to see those strategic results? Also impacts on what constitutes that 20% that you're going to invest your resources in. So this decision here, it can require a bit of debating in the boardroom as executives for us to agree what we must prioritize and be sure about what we're saying is promising on the other side. It's not always going to be 100% achieved. Those goals that were, or those benefits that we are assuming are going to come with a strategic initiative may not always all be realized, but we can apply our experience, we can apply our prowess and say, what do we believe would actually make a difference? We understand the market, we understand our people, we understand the times, the technological advancements, we understand all the environmental issues. Which one of these objectives could actually give us a lot more in terms of our strategic goals, help us achieve more, maybe in a shorter time, to enable us to take care of these other strategic initiatives. Therefore, when that decision is made, we now know strategically we are investing our resources in these here initiatives. They are the lever that can give us better results, and maybe even faster, depending on urgency. All right, so now we will have prioritized these initiatives. It requires that we should be very mature and all act in the interest of the company. Because when times like these come, people will have seen those strategic initiatives. They are emotionally attached to some of them. They want those strategic initiatives to be implemented because they will be led by them, or they'll be coming to their company, and they want them to be done, regardless of whether there is a better argument for other initiatives to take precedence. So it's important that we stay objective, exercise maturity at this point, and defend the future of the organization instead of our own egos and what would benefit us. Some people will be speaking against strategic initiatives because they know that they're going to have to allocate resources, people, and time towards those initiatives, and they will speak against them and kill the prospects of the organization where it wanted to be strategically. So at this point, you need to be a robust member of your executive team. Whether you're a junior executive or you're a senior executive, exercise absolute maturity in honor of your organization to defend those strategic goals that you have set for yourselves. So when we're discussing these and saying which one is a wildly important goal, let's all know that there are those which are wildly important. It's like a demonstration where an airport operator has got planes which are landing every minute, yeah? Every 5 minutes, there's a plane that is landing. All those planes which are hovering in the skies waiting to land are very important. But the wildly important goal is, the wildly important plane is the one that's literally landing right now. We want to make sure those people are safe and they've landed on the ground. And the next important one is the next one that's landing right now. So we can't say, oh, these planes must land. And get overwhelmed. These planes are in the sky. They all need to land. They're all important. That way now we are just caught up in a whirlwind. So it's important that we exercise soundness, mature thinking, and objectivity to identify which one is our wildly important goal, apply the 80-20 rule, take the 20% of these many objectives, the ones that will give us more results. So that is with prioritization, and it's still in the process. So you will have your OPEX, you will have your CAPEX, and then you'll have your STRATEX. Your OPEX, your operational ones, your CAPEX, the ones which are capital expenditure towards your assets, etc. And then you will have your strategy budget. Some costs in the strategy budget or in the strategy budget could be operational. Like I said, you're overhauling customer processes or customer service processes. Most of the expenses that you will incur in there could be operational. Maybe you decide, you know what, let's invest in technology that's going to help our customers. We want new software. It's still for this strategic initiative that constitutes CAPEX. So in your STRATEX, you will have some OPEX and some CAPEX, as long as it's geared towards the achievement of a strategic initiative, one that has a start date and an end date. Remember, that would then constitute STRATEX, whether it's operational or CAPEX. Because it's getting us this unique initiative that is going to help shift, the story for us, it constitutes a strategy budget. So I want to see OPEX, CAPEX, and STRATEX. And I don't want you to leave all of this to your finance department. Very important point. If you're watching this and you're not a finance person, this is for you. Finance people would have long gotten this perhaps at the beginning, even for those we do have to still educate when it comes to STRATEX, because not all finance people have understood STRATEX to the depth that they should, and also the political issues that come when the setting of the STRATEX is concerned. So at this point, when we have agreed on what our wildly important goals are, and we allocate resources there and saying these are the most strategic ones or pressing ones that we'll prioritize in the now, the way to allocate those resources is also a mini process. And that is why I was saying even finance people would need to be refreshed on that. Even you who is not a finance person, because usually it's you who's going to be overhauling those customer service processes, so it's you that's going to be leading that next strategic initiative. So it's important that you know the mini process that then ensues after here. We are going to be forming groups of subject matter experts, people who know what exactly goes into process re-engineering, for example. I'm just sticking with that example. Process re-engineering, who are those people who are good at that? They have to be in the team. People who are somewhere in the value chain when it comes to servicing customers, they must be in that project. Then people who are maybe coming from IT, who are going to be building that app for us, they must be in that project team. So you see now you are constituting these people. This is not to start the project. No, this is to build the STRATEX. They are the ones who are going to speak about this project at a high level and say, looking at what this project entails, we would need to set aside this, that, the other. Or we need 1 or 2 or 3 of us to go and get quotations from different consultants to say, how much would this be, that be? Such that by Friday we reconvene and we have high-level figures that we can give our finance team. This is the mini process that normally does not happen. This is why you go to somebody, we have to submit our budget. How much is that thing that how much you're going to spend on your strategic initiative? 8 million. This is one individual pulling a figure from the sky, so you don't want to do that. You want people who have been selected to lead the strategic initiative, to form their little committee there, not little as in to reduce its importance, but the size of it. It doesn't need to be a big committee. Just subject matter experts or experts in different fields come together from internally and decide what will be the budget that the finance team can then go and help defend for us to work. So even when it comes to human resources, you have to have those high-level discussions so that individual team members can be approached to see what's possible. In that week, you say, do you think this year when you look at your workload, you'd be able to give us 2 people from your team? Because whatever they say is going to depend, it's going to determine whether we have overtime money that we have to pay people, or we're going to have to employ temporary staff members to come in, or project team from outside to come in. That affects the financial allocation and the human resource allocation. So these high-level discussions usually need to happen 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the strategy is set. And if not, let them happen a few weeks or months before the budget itself is approved to go to the board. So whatever the case, they must happen. These discussions by the subject matter experts around a particular strategic initiative, that must happen. If you are a CEO watching this, you must make sure those committees meet. Those mini committees that help each other as subject matter experts to build the strategies and give it to your finance team and help to make it as informed as can be, not to pull, amounts from the sky. Hope I'm not belaboring the point and you got the point, because it's when that strategy is now been agreed, it can be defended and we can now start rolling our project out. So now, it's important that as part of the strategies, we talk about monitoring and evaluation and adjusting, I want to say. Because when we look at the project as it is unfolding, we don't want to just say, no, we put aside 10 million for this project and so we're going to spend all of it. Maybe as circumstances unfold, you realize we're only going to need 3 million to get this thing done. So let's work with 3 million. You don't want to also say, look, this budget required 70 million. We have exhausted our 70 million. And then you have everybody in the team saying, well, you have exhausted all that we could give you. So you want for there to be flexibility for consideration of circumstances as they evolve. You are going to be as robust as you can be in your project management. You're going to be as robust as you can be in the change management, which can cause a lot of wastage. And when you come back to the team to say 70 million does not seem to be enough, we're going to need an extra 5 million or whatever the case could be, you want for there to be flexibility to adjust. So usually we just say monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation. I want to call it monitoring and adjusting. When we evaluate, what then do we do? Because there has to be some action that's taken based off what we are finding out from our monitoring and evaluation. So monitoring and adjusting. So that evaluation is part of the adjusting part, to say whatever we evaluate, we must be seen to do something. And I love the idea of adjusting because it also helps to ensure that we are even better aligned to our strategic goals. You could be doing an initiative this way, and when you're looking to evaluate whether it's working, even if you are reviewing the resources that you allocated towards that and you realize, you know what, we're actually going to need 2 more people from IT. If that's going to better align us to our strategic goal, let us adjust those resources to get us to achieving the strategic goal. So that is in the general process of setting a strategy. I hope this has been helpful. I want to now talk about the common mistakes that we normally make in resource allocation. These mistakes we make, I would say, as organizations, but it's usually really us, the executives within the organization making decisions, strategic decisions about where we put our resources. And so these can be very detrimental in the achievement of our strategic goals. And we're wondering, why are we not getting where we want to go? When we have sat down and we have built this beautiful strategy, why are we now actually achieving the very opposite of what we had said at our strategy session? It's because when it comes to the day-to-day allocation of resources, we are not putting our money, our time, our people, our resources where our mouth is. So it's important that we are seen to be aligning. So some of the mistakes that we make, the first one is short-term and long-term goals. Are we going to be focusing more short-term, or are we going to be focusing long-term? What are the things that we're trying to achieve? So usually it's the short-term gains that we prioritize, that, people want to see a bonus this year. So they are going to be prioritizing short-term returns that everybody can see quickly so they can make a profit. Sometimes somebody's coming to the end of their contract. I'm talking reality, practical things here. If somebody knows that within this particular time my contract is going to be ending, they want to ramp up initiatives that only will give returns within that time so my contract can be renewed. And these are realities. When you are making a decision between your belly and the organization, usually executives pick their bellies. So it's important that we know that these are the common mistakes that then we look at companies and we say, that company was amazing. It was going places. Even when I was growing up, my mother was only using that bank. Today, that bank is like a tuck shop. Nobody wants to go to that bank. What happened? Executives like you and I chose our bellies as opposed to the strategic goals that the company was looking at. So it is always for multiple reasons why people choose short-term gains versus longer-term strategic goals. And usually even the putting off of fires to get the company to continue running the company or to ensure that the company is a going concern, it's sometimes called for that short-term thinking and short-term prioritization to make sure we stay above the water at the expense of the longer-term goals. So here you're not necessarily trying to feed your belly in that selfish way, but you're trying to really keep this company afloat, genuinely trying to keep the company afloat in the short term, and as a result you're prioritizing short-term initiatives over the long-term goals that we have set for ourselves. So the company is somewhat surviving in the present time, and then because of all those threats, those risks that you saw in your SWOT analysis, in the strategy, they begin to materialize and you go down. All those opportunities that you had spotted in your strategy, you have not been able to seize them because you are busy putting off fires in the day-to-day, and therefore you've missed opportunities, you've lost competitive edge, you've even lost relevance. Even if you are a not-for-profit organization, there's no impact and you start going down, or your financiers stop funding your organization. So it's just those concerns that while you're dealing with the short-term resource allocations, you are neglecting the resources that must be put aside for the longer term, where we say we have to be able to plant trees, even if it's trees that we will not be able to live under. That is the the challenge of an executive today, being able to do things today that you're not going to be there to enjoy. By the time those things start materializing, your contract has ended and you have probably joined a different organization. You should be able to be okay with seeing the fruits of your labor materialize for the sake of the company that you served. And be able to speak about what you did in your next interview. So it's not like the next employer will not be recognizing what you were doing for that organization to be a sustainable organization, to reap long-term rewards while you're on to pursuing your next chapter. And if it's not an employer who's going to value that, you probably don't want to join that employer anyway. So I loved this coming from Idra. I hope that's the right name. The former CEO of Pepsi, Indra. I listened to her talking about how she holds debates with her board to say, I'm going to prioritize returns which will be happening when I've left Pepsi. So I'm not going to be pressured to be making decisions that benefit only the quick returns that you must see here and now. I have to be the CEO that plants seeds and trees for Pepsi that Pepsi employees and clients and shareholders are going to enjoy long after I've left. I thought that was quite the backbone. Let me just confirm that name before I butcher it. Indra, yes, Indra Noi, the former CEO of PepsiCo. So I really loved that thinking, and I was seeing how it's not common for a CEO to be able to stand up and say, stand up to the board, as it were, because the board generally represents the interests of the shareholders. I'm not going to prioritize the dividend that can be enjoyed in the here and now. I have to plow back. I have to invest in technology. I have to invest in people. I have to invest in other areas and processes that we will enjoy benefits from much later. She wasn't necessarily just speaking about her contract or post her contract, but she was just saying it's important that we prioritize things that will happen later. And in this case, she did emphasize that it will be benefits or returns that can only be enjoyed once I've left the organization. So usually those pressures where we know that our contracts will be ending soon, we then prioritize short-term strategic initiatives that will give us ROI faster. So it's important that we know that is a common mistake that is made by executives, and you and I have to make up our minds about what it is that we want to do and what sort of engagements or discussions we want to have with our superiors to defend the long-term strategic goals and to defend the investment that has to be done now with the return on that investment happening at a much later date. So that is something that we must discuss. And the other mistake that we do is underestimating the resources that will be required for a project. That is a problem, because then it means we start a project in excitement, we have not planned for this, that, the other that could transpire during the project, and then we are in the middle of the project and the resources run out, and now we are compromising the project success, we are causing delays, we are even the project will even collapse. Before you know it, even the human resources that had been allocated to the project, now they are dispersing, they are going back to their normal day-to-day operations, because now this project is not going anywhere. So usually underestimating what resources we're going to need is a problem. So we need to be able to engage subject matter experts, industry experts in helping us to build our strategies, so that we know that we have allocated reasonable resources that will take our project to successful completion. So that is one other mistake. The other mistake that we make is quite the opposite, where we over allocate resources to a project. We just do it over. We're allocating too many resources to a project, and we realize that now we are causing inefficiencies, we are wasting the organizational resources, and that in itself then pulls the company down. Isn't that confusing when you see a company that was going pumping and building strategic projects, and you're saying this company is going to last into the foreseeable future, because here they are putting these resources towards building new premises, and they're building new maybe technologies, they're investing in technologies, whereas they have over allocated resources, and before you know it, they are collapsing because the company just could not keep up. So now here we are, we have achieved the very opposite of what we're trying to build, which is you invest in strategic initiatives today, and over time you start enjoying the returns. Now if you over invest, then it means over time, instead of getting returns, you get collapsing. And that is usually the conundrum and the confusion. People are like, this is paradoxical. This company was working on strategic initiatives. It's supposed to be enjoying the fruits thereof. Now it has collapsed. We can never get it right now, can we? Yes, we can. It just requires thorough planning and proper resource allocation and information. Let's be informed by experience. Let's be informed by subject matter experts, and specifically, let's also stay alert to the changes happening in the market, because then they can affect what we have to be budgeting for or allocating resources for. Which brings me to the next mistake. Mistake that we make as executives is the lack of flexibility and adaptability. The inability to be flexible, to change and accommodate market shifts, strategic shifts. Even when there is a change in the market, it affects what we must do. Yeah. So if you are not going to be flexible enough to allow for those changes to happen, and it may call for you to reallocate resources, to do the resource allocation process almost altogether, to go and renegotiate the strategy budget and maybe reallocate resources, take some of those from your strategic budget and put them into different strategic budget, because strategic shifts have happened. If I was running a strategic initiative and you were running a strategic initiative, and we're hit with a market issue, or there's turbulence in the market, there needs to be a quick strategic shift. It may mean that I must take some of the resources, the money, the people, the time, or the technologies which were allocated to my strategic initiative, and make sure they're given to your strategic initiative, so we can achieve the more pressing strategic goals. But that lack of flexibility and adaptability is what we don't have, and most organizations commonly make that mistake. Everybody's like, no, so why must I give up my initiative? Why don't you stop your project? Why must the bad name come to my project? Why It's something that we must really be able to speak, communicate, and think and objectively make decisions as executives. The reason why I'm saying communicate is so that everybody concerned knows that their project did not fail. In fact, they're a bigger person. To stand up and give their resources to another another team that can then take the company to where it needs to be and carry on with their project much later when there's been another shift or when the situation is settled down. So that communication, decision making needs to happen, and we need to be seen, more importantly, to be flexible and adaptable to market changes and to strategic shifts, so the company doesn't go down. And that usually calls for a reallocation of resources, and that usually does not happen, and that's a common mistake. Another mistake that we make is the general lack of alignment with strategic priorities. When we are talking strategy, everybody's on board. And I love that they buy nice food, we go to a nice fancy place. Strategy sessions are usually very, very nice. We are dreaming, we're talking about where we can be, the dream. So when we come back and we start allocating resources, one of the most common mistakes is that we allocate resources in other areas other than the strategic initiatives that we agreed. So then you find throughout the year we have scattered efforts. Everybody is doing that, the other. We are literally just trying, having completely ignored the strategic goals and the strategic initiatives that were to lead towards those goals. That one where we are ignoring the strategic and we lack that prioritization or alignment. When you're asking somebody, you are asking for 17 million for this thing. Why are you asking for this? What is it going to do? They give you reasons which are towards the day-to-day operations, business as usual, but they have put no request whatsoever for new strategic initiatives. And usually you want somebody to say, hey, usually I spend 79 million on this, so this time around I'm going to spend just 59 million on it. I need you to help me allocate 20 million to kickstarting the strategic initiative. So here I'll tell my team to buckle up and we become a bit more, cost conscious and use some of the money towards getting the strategic initiative off the ground. Why? Because while I'm dealing with the day-to-day business as usual operations to sustain the business here, I need to also be working on strategic initiatives that can secure the future that we're envisioning for this organization. So that is the sort of mature conversation that never happens. So that is the mistake that we make, and we have scattered efforts. Everybody is trying their best, knocking off late, incurring overtime, only for the company to collapse in a few years or the organization to lose relevance in a few years. And you're like, how can people be working and knocking off so late and the company is still retrenching? It's because all of that was not towards strategic initiative, lack of alignment with strategic priorities. The other mistake that we make is poor communication and lack of transparency. So just poor communication, poor transparency, where we're not communicating on time, we're not communicating clearly for people to understand what is going on, what is the strategic initiative, which resources must go where. Was I supposed to be here on Fridays, or was I supposed to be with the project team on Fridays? Am I going to be punished for going to join the other team on Tuesdays? So all of this requires communication and transparency, well, for a leader to be able to explain, no, I'm actually allocating you to this place. We are agreeing this in our performance contract. These are the changes which are happening in this. Even as the project is unfolding, you want to continue to communicate, reiterate where we are going, what we're trying to achieve, what's going right, what's not going right. Communication gets people moving at the same tone, at the same pace, common understanding, and there's ease of understanding. But where there's no communication, there's no transparency. This project we don't know whether it's coming or going, and it's marred with politics. And nobody wants to call the thing a thing and tell the truth about this project. It's marred with politics. There's a lot of chatter in the corridor. There's no formal communication about what is happening with this project. Somebody just keeps whispering it's somebody's pet project. Somebody else is whispering, oh, they're doing this project because somebody's contract is ending. Or somebody's whispering, oh, they're doing this contract because so-and-so won the tender and it's so-and-so's sister and that's why they're doing this project. There's just so much going on. Poor communication and transparency, and it causes misunderstanding and it causes resistance. We'll talk about it in the change management class, where we say people then generally resist such projects. They refuse to participate in them because there's just no clear communication. So the communication has to be clear. It has to be consistent. It has to be frequent, so people keep knowing what is happening. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves, now that we're talking about resource allocation, ineffectively allocating resources, wasting resources. People just come into the project room and they sit there and they chat and they talk all these politics until it's 5 and they go back to their offices, or some of them don't show up. So there's horrendous resource allocation because there just wasn't clear communication. So it's important that we communicate, we work on, and that mistake is common. If you don't understand a thing and you are the one either leading a team or you are part of the team that's working on an initiative, go and inform yourself. Escalate the matter to your CEO. If you don't know what's happening as a CEO, talk to the consultants. Talk to your team members who are subject matter experts so that you can get clear communication that you can then convey to your people for there to be order. That does not usually happen, and that's a common mistake in resource allocation. And people are going up and down, finance is refusing to give us the money, procurement blocked the order, and it's just a whole nightmare. And sometimes because these are strategic initiatives, we've called the attention of internal and external stakeholders, it's just a disaster even at a brand level. So the other common mistake that we make is the failure to monitor and evaluate the progress that we're making in a strategic initiative. We need to be able to be reviewing and monitoring whether or not the strategic initiative is even moving, especially because strategic initiatives tend to take long. They are not popcorn. You don't put it in the microwave when we're eating. No, they take a bit of time. So it's important that you continue to monitor, like we spoke about, create a dashboard where every little progress that is happening, people can see it on the dashboard. Have regular meetings where people can, no, we don't do that, right? So we're not monitoring. People don't know whether this project is still happening, whether it's still ongoing. You have also lost hope. There was a time you were away for 2 weeks, you were not well. There was a time, so all of this, then it just builds this cold energy getting into the project. And because we are not evaluating, we're not monitoring, we don't know whether the resources must still be gathering there, whether finance should still be allocating. The consultant that came here last week, was it authorized? Should they still continue coming? It's just a whole disaster because we're not monitoring, we're not evaluating whether this is actually going where we wanted it to go. The other mistake that we make is not considering future needs. And it still speaks somewhat to that short-term site that I was talking about earlier. When you get into a position of management, whether you are a junior manager, senior manager, or an executive at any level, your job is to look into the future. You cannot just be having your head plugged into the operational day-to-day only every day. Your job entails that you must lift your head and look into the future. That's why I always say to executives, leave the office. Every now and then, just literally physically leave the office. Go out, take a walk, go to a coffee place, even just for an hour, 2 hours, so that you can help your mind think in a different way. We have to be able to zero in and zoom into the future and say what's going to happen in the future so that we can make provisions for it now. Otherwise, this future sort of comes and happens, and there's this reactive resource allocation. You are literally putting off fires. It doesn't mean that every fire or crisis that comes our way, or problem really, is always unpredictable. Some of them were predictable and we just didn't care to look into the future. Now the problem is sort of materialized. It's here. We could have seen it ahead on and allocated resources accordingly. Now it's here. We are taking money from where we had put money. We're pulling people from other operational tasks that they were working on. We want them to work on this one quickly. So that reactive approach causes chaos. We could be inefficient. We can waste a lot of resources, and we could also miss some growth opportunities that we could have planned for, that we could be allocating resources properly for. So here you are, you're hearing everybody's moving towards online. So let's go. Why are you suddenly running towards online when you had all this time to plan for your online movement? Or your online initiatives. So it's important that we don't ignore the future, but that is the mistake that most executives still exhibit. Many people love the idea of being promoted to CEO. And we announce on LinkedIn, you are now a CEO. Many people are excited. I've now joined this organization as director of such and such. And we ignore what that entails, what it means you must now do, and graduate from your management or lower management way of thinking into your higher management way of thinking, where you graduate in your outlook, where you are now responsible for where this train is going. You're no longer just sitting in the train enjoying bonuses as and when they come. Now you're sort of in the front seat of the train. We are the one we look at when we say, management or senior management or whatever lower management position, you could be, you're a supervisor, we look to you now. We're no longer saying, they are saying this and then they did this. No, you are they now. So your ability to look into the future or your lack thereof then causes a problem, and that's a common mistake in resource allocation, and people don't know what needs to be done. The other mistake that we make is where we don't utilize technology to the extent that we should. We should be able to leverage technology to help us achieve certain efficiencies as we execute our strategic initiatives, and most of the time technology is ignored. Isn't it because usually the executives are people who are coming from generations which are not exactly keeping up with technology as much as they should, and sometimes not even able to open themselves up enough to have coffee sessions and chill sessions with people who can teach them about latest developments in technology. So now when it comes to strategic initiatives, we still come with the old mindset of thinking a strategic initiative must cost 100 million and above. Maybe not. Because technology is here to make sure you achieve a strategic initiative for 40 million and below. So all those require that we should leverage technology, and that underutilization of technology is a common mistake that we make as executives today, trying to allocate resources towards strategic initiatives. So there are a lot of inefficiencies. We're limiting our ability to be more efficient and even more effective in achieving our goals because we're ignoring technology. The other mistake that we make is ignoring the lessons learned and the feedback that we're getting from our people. Remember, we're not operating in a vacuum. We have people who have either done this work before, or who are our clients, or employees who are sometimes even client-facing employees, or those who are busy on the operational line who know a lot, but ignoring their feedback and ignoring their input, even their experience, where somebody says, I'm a subject matter in this space and this is what I feel could be done for the strategic initiative to be better, and we don't listen. We take resources, we put them where somebody is. We put resources there before, it didn't work. We took those particular guys and said they should build an app before, it didn't go. They were in a room somewhere for 2 years trying to build that app. We incurred a lot of financial loss trying to build that app for 2 years, and there was human resource allocated as well to that group, and all of that was happening, and the app never came out. So this is feedback. These are lessons learned that we must incorporate. The mistake we make is we don't want to listen because today it's my turn. I'm Veronica. It's my turn also to lead a strategic initiative. You want to deny me my opportunity. No, you are ignoring feedback. You are ignoring common lessons learned, obvious information that could be helping you allocate your resources better, spend your time where it needs to be spent, spend financial resources where they need to be spent, and leverage the experience of your team and those who are subject matter experts. Common mistake. So I'm just listing some of these mistakes so that you can see that even when it comes to resource allocation, you are not the first one to come on the scene and being requested to allocate resources to strategic initiatives. So you want to avoid some of these common pitfalls that executives before you have made, and therefore you are now in the helm, right? You are now part of management at one level or the other. So it's our responsibility that during our time, we are seen to be taking the organization to those strategic heights that we are envisioning for it. So let me just share a few practical tips that you could use in allocating resources as we close the session today. So what are sort of the next steps that I want you to take with you as you're leaving this class? The first one is align resource allocation with strategic goals. Find out where the company is looking to go, get those specific strategic goals, work on those objectives as we discussed, and then start allocating resources towards the achievement of those strategic goals. Like I said, we need executives today who think like this, people who are involved in or engaged in wanting to take the company to where it envisions to go strategically. Don't be part of the people who have forgotten about the strategy. People who say, no, we don't care about achieving these mega strategic goals. No, it's easy to not want to ruffle feathers and never ever mention the strategy or strategic goals because you don't want to upset everybody. But be the type of manager, director, or CEO who aligns the limited resources. Resources are always finite. Make sure the ones you do have are aligned towards strategic goals. The other one that I want to maybe leave you with as a next step Go and implement robust processes of planning for your resource allocation. So here you are, you know what strategic initiatives the company has sort of proposed. It's important that you go and come up with a process. Follow the ideas that I gave you here today about identifying which ones are our wildly important goals. And then when we have the wildly important goals, which ones are we going to be putting our resources into? We have, 10 initiatives, 10 initiatives, and we want to take only 2 strategic initiatives because we feel they are the 20% that is going to deliver more impact. They are the wildly important ones. They'll give us impact quicker, and that we can even use to later support the other strategic initiatives. Go and come up with that process. Sit down with your team and say, guys, why don't we make it just our hobby to sit here and analyze these goals and analyze these objectives and pick 2 that we feel we can throw our heads into, or pick 1 that we can throw our minds into and implement it. So go and implement that robust process of planning for the resources that you have. The other one that I think is a key takeaway is go and think about how you're going to communicate for transparency and consistency. Foster that open communication with your team. Keep giving them updates, your team and other stakeholders, other colleagues, your regulators, the people that have an interest in what's going on in your company, your clients. How are you going to be communicating about your strategic initiatives and what sort of resources that you need, the support that you need, what resources you need allocated to you? Go and plan that communication, and it's usually the number 1 thing after a session like this, where you have to go back and be like, I was learning a lot in class, now where do I start? Plan your communication steps. We're going to communicate openly. We're going to communicate transparently. We're going to get people to support and know what resources they can give us. Help them also contribute to the ideology. And as we develop this thing, who is interested, let's involve them as well. You'll learn later about design thinking and the sort of people you must involve so that your work is actually geared towards meeting real needs and meeting or achieving real strategic goals. So go plan your communication and make sure that it's consistent and it's transparent. The next step for you that I want to charge you with is go and implement flexibility. I want you to feel that you can be flexible, you can be adaptable. It's time for you to go and build that flexibility and adaptability within your own mind. We're going to deal with mindset issues later, but also within your team. You want your team to be a flexible, adaptable team that understands that markets change, needs of our customers change, technologies are changing, so much change is going on that we cannot afford to be saying, well, we're not saying this, the other thing, the other week. Now we are changing, we are saying this thing this week. These people don't have direction. No, these people have direction. In fact, these people have flexibility and adaptability. Today's organizations must be agile organizations, and it refers to the individuals within these organizations that must be flexible and adaptable. Otherwise, we will be swallowed by the times. So go and implement your flexibility from the mindset to your operations, to your processes, even the way you communicate and you react to things as a team and as an individual. The other one that I want to charge you with, invest in technology and tools. The first place is your own mindset, where you must embrace technology. So I was just telling you how AI has just revolutionized my slides presentation, creation. So go and throw yourself into new technologies and tools. Talk to those people who may know. It's not even about age. Sometimes there could be those who are knowledgeable about new technologies that they can help you infuse them into making your processes better, your strategic initiatives better. Go and inform yourself. And when it's time to debate these things in the office, make sure that you are for investing. Now it can be a question of how and when and where do we invest, but generally be for investing in technology and such digital tools. The other one that we must speak about is establish continuous monitoring and evaluation. We spoke about having a dashboard or your weekly or monthly meetings with your team so that we're constantly keeping tabs on those who are fully working on these strategic initiatives. Are the resources enough? Have they been allocated well? Are they being managed well? Are they being used correctly? All of this monitoring has to be done. It's not something that we can leave and just hope and pray that the team is doing well. No, we have to meet, find out from the team, help each other with thoughts and ideas around how best we can use the available resources. So that evaluation of whether or not the resources are being used for what they were intended to be used for, will they be enough? It also helps us in planning, and adjusting to say, oh, I think these resources are actually too much. We need to take some of the people out of that team and take them back to the other project. So it helps with adjusting as we monitor and evaluate. So that's another tip. And the other one that I want you to take away with you is encourage learning and improvement. Let your people know that mistakes which have been made are not for us to be so ashamed and never mention them. We are to take them and to see what it is that we can learn from them. Remember the growth mindset. We have to see everything that we are throwing ourselves into as an opportunity to grow, to learn, because it actually truly is. Nobody was born implementing strategic initiatives. At some point you have to learn, and when you learn, keep getting feedback and keep improving and make it your culture of continuous improvement, a culture of continuous learning where people know that our experiences are to continuously teach us something, and we do take those teachings and we do take that feedback and we do implement it when next we do a project. So that's what I want you to take away, so you don't waste resources on things that you could have easily learned, mistakes that you could have easily avoided. The next one that I want you to take away as a next step is empower your managers and your teams. Let the people who work with you, under you, be empowered to participate in strategic initiatives. Give them, it starts with the communication, doesn't it? So you communicate with them, you let them know what's happening, you let them also participate, contribute to what could be done. So by empowering them like that and giving them the resources that they need, either time, the time and schedule allocation that we spoke about earlier, or some human resources, or even financial resources that you can then defend for them and get them those finances or whatever allocation they require, a private working space that they may need booked away for them for 6 months. Do that, facilitate that, empower your managers and your teams to be able to execute strategic initiatives. Those decisions that you make sure that they are aligned and they empower your team, and they too would make decisions that you expect to be aligned to strategic initiatives, and you become the team that is fully functional operationally and fully active and engaged in achieving strategic goals, as opposed to just the normal operational goals. I've seen managers and directors who, when you're asking for strategic KPIs and to get an update, they get so defensive and so angry that, why are you asking me? We have been so busy in our operations. Why don't you ask me what we've been doing? Why are you only asking me about that one thing over there? That one thing over there is a strategic initiative. These 100 things that you're telling me about are so important. They're keeping us today afloat, but they are operational. They are to keep business as usual and to keep us performing at the level we are today. That one thing over there that I keep referencing is the one that is going to give us a leap and give us competitive advantage and help us achieve strategic goals. So I'm not downplaying the 100 things that you've been doing. I'm just saying, if our organization is going to be competitive, profitable, or more aligned brand-wise, etc., impact-wise, we have to be seen to be doing these few, which are strategic levers that can help us, achieve strategic goals. So it's important that when you get to your team, empower them in that way so they can be participating, even as they do the day-to-day, participate in strategic initiatives. The next one, stay agile and responsive. Flexibility. Listen to the new developments. Apply your mind on the new developments. Let them form part of your discussions, informal and formal discussions at work, so you know what's happening in the market. What are these new risks that we are looking at? How can we pivot? How can I change the strategic initiatives that we're involved in to make sure they are more aligned? Be responsive, be adaptable. At some point, I will even say be proactive. Some things you can see them coming in advance and you can sort of adjust and pivot and say, guys, let's be flexible. Let's change the way we're doing it here so we're better aligned. And communicate that shift. Communicate that pivot, even even to the people you report to, the board. Tell the board, we have shifted our approach in this initiative a little bit because these are the market shifts, or these are the other strategic shifts that we have seen. I implore you to go and be a bit more flexible, adaptable, and responsive. The last one that I want to speak about is drive accountability and results. We need to be meeting regularly and reporting on what we are doing. The resources that people have been given, let them be accountable for them. Let people give you what results they are achieving with the finances that you have allocated to them. We spoke about clear matrices. Let there be clear matrices that people know these are the indicators we're looking for. These ones are the lead indicators. Even though we're working towards a 1-year project with lag goals or lag indicators which we are trying to achieve then, today there could be indicators along the way. Drive accountability for those indicators. Let people hit those early on lead indicators that you can then track their progress. I hope this discussion on resource allocation has been useful to you. I implore you, as you take these next steps, to be more efficient in your resource allocation and be very deliberate about allocating resources towards your strategy. Your strategy has to be there, and it doesn't always have to be a big budget for you to justify that it's a strategic initiative. But there has to be clear, evident commitment from your part that you want those initiatives, strategic initiatives, to be carried out. And so you're committing resources of whatever nature to make that happen and support your team. Thank you for joining me today.